The drawing your child made by instinct. Art is a window into past lives. Asterisk when 4-year-old Olivia Martinez picked up a charcoal pencil for the first time and began sketching with the precision of a master artist. Her mother, Carmen, assumed it was a fluke. But when the child's hands moved across the paper with impossible confidence, creating detailed portraits of people she'd never seen, buildings she'd never visited, and landscapes that existed only in history books, Carmen realized she was witnessing something that defied explanation. The drawings weren't childish scribbles. They were sophisticated works of art that captured the essence of 1920s Paris with startling accuracy. Street scenes with perfect perspective, fashionable women in period dress, and architectural details that would challenge even seasoned artists flowed from Olivia's small fingers, as if she were remembering rather than imagining. But the most unsettling drawing was the self-portrait. A young woman with dark hair and sad eyes, wearing a beret and artist's smock, signed in elegant script, Isabelle Dubois, 1923, a name that would lead the Martinez family into a mystery, spanning continents and decades. Asterisk, if stories that blur the lines between art and mystery captivate you, make sure to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. You're about to discover something that will change how you see children's artwork forever. Part 1. The incident in the morning of October 15, 2021, began like any other in the Martinez household in Tucson, Arizona. Carmen was preparing breakfast, while her husband Luis got ready for his shift at the hospital, where he worked as a nurse. 4-year-old Olivia sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by her usual collection of crayons and construction paper, creating the typical colorful chaos that defined most preschooler artwork. But on this particular morning, something was different. Olivia pushed aside her familiar art supplies and reached for a charcoal pencil that had fallen from Luce's sketching kit, a hobby he'd abandoned years ago, but whose materials still lingered in various drawers around the house. Mia, that's not for coloring, Carmen said gently, noticing her daughter's interest in the adult art supply. That's Papa's drawing pencil. Olivia looked up with an expression that was unusually serious for a 4-year-old. I need it for the pictures in my head, she said, her voice carrying a gravity that made Carmen pause in her breakfast preparation. What happened next would haunt Carmen for months to come. Olivia's small hand gripped the charcoal pencil with a confidence that seemed impossible for her age, and she began to draw with fluid, deliberate strokes. There was no hesitation, no childish experimentation with the medium. Her movements were precise, controlled, and purposeful. Within minutes, a face began to emerge on the paper, not the stick figure representations typical of young children, but a sophisticated portrait with proper proportions, shading, and depth. The subject was a woman with dark hair, pulled back in a style that seemed vintage, her eyes holding an expression of melancholy that was captured with remarkable emotional nuance. Carmen watched in stunned silence as Olivia continued working, adding details to the woman's clothing, a simple blouse with a distinctive collar, a beret positioned at a casual angle, and what appeared to be an artist's smock. The technical skill displayed was far beyond anything Carmen had ever seen from her daughter, whose previous artistic efforts had been limited to enthusiastic but typical preschool creations. Who is that, Olivia? Carmen asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That's me, Olivia replied without looking up from her work. When I was big, when I lived in the city with all the pretty buildings. The statement sent chills down Carmen's spine. Olivia had never been to any city with pretty buildings. Their life in suburban Tucson was far removed from urban architecture. Moreover, the woman in the drawing looked nothing like Olivia, who had light brown hair and round, cheerful features, while the portrait depicted someone with sharp, elegant bone structure and dark, straight hair. As Olivia put the finishing touches on the portrait, she did something that made Carmen's heart race. In the lower right corner of the paper, she began to write with the same confident strokes she'd used for the drawing. The letters flowed in elegant script. Isabelle Dubois, 1923. Olivia, Carmen said, trying to keep her voice steady. You can't write cursive, and you don't know how to spell those words. Olivia looked up from her work with a puzzled expression. I'm not Olivia when I draw. I'm Isabelle, and these are my hands when I draw. The child held up her small hands, studying them with an expression of confusion, as if they didn't quite belong to her. But they're little now. They used to be bigger, with longer fingers, better for holding the brushes. Carmen felt the room spinning slightly. She sat down heavily in the chair next to her daughter, staring at the portrait that seemed to gaze back at her with knowing eyes. The technical skill was undeniable. The proportions were accurate. The shading created genuine depth, and the yummy depth, and the yummy. Emotional expression was captured with sensitivity that spoke of mature artistic ability. Where did you learn to draw like this? Carmen asked. I always know how to draw, Olivia said simply. In the other place, I drew all the time. In the studio, with the big window that looked at the tower. I painted the people who came to visit, and the flowers in the market, and the bridges over the water. The description was vivid and specific, delivered with the casual confidence of someone recounting familiar memories. Olivia spoke of techniques and subjects that no 4-year-old should know, using vocabulary that was far beyond her typical speech patterns. That evening, when Luis returned from work, Carmen showed him the portrait. His medical training had taught him to look for logical explanations, but as he studied the drawing, he found himself at a loss for words. This is impossible, he said, examining the precise line work and sophisticated shading. Olivia has never shown any artistic ability beyond normal childhood drawing. This looks like it was done by someone with years of training. The family spent that night in quiet discussion, trying to understand what they had witnessed. The portrait sat on the kitchen table, Isabelle Dubois's sad eyes seeming to watch them as they debated the implications of their daughter's mysterious artistic emergence. Part 2, ESALATIO. Over the following weeks, Olivia's artistic episodes became more frequent and increasingly sophisticated. What had begun as a single stunning portrait evolved into a growing collection of drawings that documented what appeared to be an entire life lived in early 20th century Paris. Each morning, Olivia would wake up asking for her drawing tools, always the charcoal pencils, never her colorful crayons. She would sit at the kitchen table and enter what Carmen began to think of as a trance-like state, her small hands moving with the confidence of someone who had spent years perfecting their craft. The subjects of her drawings were remarkably diverse and historically specific. She sketched street scenes with perfect perspective, showing cobblestone roads lined with period architecture. She drew fashionable women in 1920s dress, their clothing rendered with attention to detail that included accurate representations of fabrics, jewelry, and hairstyles. She captured architectural landmarks with precision, focusing on ornate building facades, wrought iron balconies, and distinctive doorways. Most remarkably, Olivia began to incorporate French words into her artistic sessions. She would mutter phrases like "c'est magnifique" and "oh, est mon pinceau" as she worked, though she had never been exposed to French language instruction. When Carmen asked what these words meant, Olivia would look puzzled and say she didn't know, yet she continued to use them with apparent fluency during her drawing sessions. The emotional content of the drawings began to reveal a narrative that was both beautiful and tragic. Olivia sketched scenes of artistic life, studios filled with easels and canvases, cafe gatherings where people appeared to be engaged in animated conversation, and intimate moments of solitude where her subject, always the same dark-haired woman from the first portrait, worked alone by lamplight. But gradually, the drawings began to reflect increasing sadness and struggle. The woman appeared thinner, her clothing more worn, her surroundings less comfortable. Olivia drew scenes of poverty, small, cramped rooms with bare walls, empty easels, and a woman sitting alone with her head in her hands. Carmen documented each drawing, creating a chronological record of what appeared to be someone's life story told through art. The progression was heartbreaking. Early drawings showed artistic success and social connection, while later ones depicted isolation and hardship. The most disturbing development came when Olivia began to experience physical symptoms during her drawing sessions. She would complain of being cold, even on warm Arizona days, wrapping herself in blankets while she worked. She would cough persistently, a dry sound that concerned Carmen enough to schedule a pediatric appointment, though medical examination revealed no respiratory issues. "My chest hurts when I draw the sad pictures," Olivia told Carmen one afternoon, pressing her small hand to her sternum. "It's like the air doesn't want to come in." The family's daily routines began to revolve around Olivia's artistic episodes. Carmen would prepare special drawing spaces, ensuring proper lighting and comfortable seating. Lise would research art, history, trying to understand the techniques and subjects their daughter was depicting. Most unsettling was how Olivia's personality seemed to shift during these sessions. The cheerful, energetic preschooler would become quiet and introspective, her movements deliberate and adult-like. She would speak in a softer voice, often with what sounded like a slight accent, and would use vocabulary that seemed far beyond her years. "The light in the studio was perfect today," she would say, her voice carrying a wistfulness that was heartbreaking to hear from a 4-year-old. "But there was no money for new paints. I mixed the colors I had to make do." These statements were delivered with the matter-of-fact sadness of someone recounting real hardship, not the imaginative play typical of young children. Olivia would describe the taste of bread and cheese eaten alone in a cold room, the weight of canvases carried through rainy streets, and the loneliness of creating art that no one would buy. By November 2021, Olivia had produced over 30 drawings, each one more technically accomplished than anything a 4-year-old should be capable of creating. The collection told a coherent story of an artist's life in 1920s Paris, complete with details about daily routines, social interactions, and the gradual decline into poverty and illness. Carmen realized they were witnessing something that went far beyond childhood imagination. Olivia wasn't just drawing pictures, she was accessing memories, emotions, and skills that belonged to someone else entirely. Part 3. The Einvestai Gatai Owen-faced with their daughter's inexplicable artistic abilities and the disturbing emotional content of her drawings. Carmen and Luz decided to investigate the historical accuracy of the details Olivia had been depicting. They began by researching the name Isabelle Dubois and the Paris art scene of the 1920s. Carmen's first breakthrough came when she discovered the extensive archives of the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, many of which had been digitized and made available online. Searching through records of artists, exhibitions, and cultural events from the 1920s, she found scattered references to various individuals named Isabelle Dubois, but none that matched the specific details from Olivia's drawings. The investigation took on new urgency when Carmen noticed that Olivia's drawings included consistently accurate architectural details. The buildings, streets, and landmarks depicted in her sketches showed intimate knowledge of specific Paris neighborhoods. Carmen began cross-referencing these details with historical photographs and maps of 1920s Paris. The correlation was startling. Street layouts, building facades, and even the positioning of street lamps in Olivia's drawings matched historical documentation with remarkable precision. She had drawn the Pont Neuf from an angle that suggested familiarity with the view from a specific apartment window, and she had sketched café scenes that included accurate representations of establishments that had existed in the 1920s. Louise approached the investigation from a different angle, focusing on the artistic techniques displayed in Olivia's work. He consulted with Dr. Maria Santos, a professor of art history at the University of Arizona, who specialized in early 20th century European art movements. Dr. Santos was initially skeptical when Liz described his daughter's abilities, but when she examined the collection of drawings, her demeanor changed dramatically. These techniques are consistent with the academic training that was common in Parisian art schools during the 1920s. She explained, the use of charcoal, the approach to portraiture, the attention to fabric and texture, these reflect a specific educational tradition. The breakthrough in their research came on December 3, 2021, when Carmen discovered a digitized collection of documents from the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. Among the enrollment, records from 1920 to 1925, she found the name she had been searching for: Isabelle Marie Dubois, enrolled in the painting program from 1920 to 1923. The official record included basic biographical information. Born in Lyon in 1899, daughter of a baker, recipient of a scholarship for students of modest means. But more importantly, the file contained a photograph of the student identification card, showing a young woman who bore a striking resemblance to the self-portraits Olivia had been drawing. Further research revealed that Isabelle Dubois had been a promising student whose work had been exhibited in several student shows. Art critics of the time had praised her portrait work, noting her ability to capture psychological depth and emotional nuance, exactly the qualities that had made Olivia's drawings so disturbing and impressive. The investigation took a tragic turn when Carmen discovered records from the Paris hospitals of the mid-1920s. Isabelle Dubois had been admitted to the hospital St. Louis in November 1925, suffering from tuberculosis, a disease that would explain the coughing and breathing difficulties Olivia had been experiencing during her drawing sessions. Medical records, preserved in the hospital's archives, painted a picture of a young artist struggling with poverty and illness. Isabelle had been living in a small studio apartment in Montmartre, barely surviving on the income from occasional portrait commissions. Her condition had deteriorated rapidly, and she had died on January 15, 1926, at the age of 26. The hospital records included a notation that Isabelle had continued to draw even during her final illness, creating sketches on whatever paper she could find. The attending physician had noted that she spoke frequently of her unfinished work and expressed regret that she would never complete the paintings she had planned. Carmen's hands trembled as she read the final entry in Isabelle's medical file. Patient expired peacefully in the early hours of January 15th. Her final words were concern for her art supplies and a request that someone continue her work. She spoke of portraits that needed to be finished in a studio that would be empty without her presence. The historical documentation provided stunning validation of the details Olivia had been depicting in her drawings. The locations, the clothing, the daily routines, and even the emotional progression from hope to despair matched the documented life of Isabelle Dubois with remarkable accuracy. Dr. Santos agreed to analyze the complete collection of Olivia's drawings in the context of this historical research. Her report, completed in January 2022, concluded that the child's work demonstrated impossible knowledge of specific artistic techniques, cultural details, and personal experiences that align precisely with the documented life of Isabelle Dubois. The investigation had revealed that Olivia wasn't just creating imaginative artwork. She was apparently accessing the memories, skills, and emotions of a young artist who had died nearly a century ago. Part 4. The Bia Ricardo Juji, the most stunning validation of Olivia's connection to Isabelle Dubois came when Dr. Santos made a discovery that would challenge everything the Martinez family thought they understood about their daughter's artistic abilities. While researching French art collections for any surviving work by Isabelle Dubois, Dr. Santos found a reference in the archives of the Musée de Montmartre in 1987. During renovations of a building in Montmartre that had once housed artist studios, workers had discovered a collection of canvases and drawings hidden behind a false wall in what had been apartment 3B. The apartment's former tenant, according to building records, had been Isabelle Marie Dubois, who had lived there from 1923 until her death in 1926. The discovered artworks had been donated to the Musée de Montmartre, where they had been catalogued but never displayed. Dr. Santos contacted the museum's curator, Marie-Claire Rousseau, who agreed to provide digital copies of Isabelle's surviving work for comparison with Olivia's drawings. When the images arrived via email on January 22, 2022, the Martinez family experienced a moment of profound shock. The similarities between Isabelle's historical artwork and Olivia's contemporary drawings were undeniable. The techniques were identical, the subject matter remarkably similar, and most startling of all, several of Olivia's drawings appeared to be completions of unfinished works found in Isabelle's studio. One of Isabelle's discovered paintings showed a woman in a cafe, sketched in preliminary form with charcoal. Olivia had drawn the same scene, with the same composition and perspective, but had completed the details that Isabelle had left unfinished. The facial features, the clothing, and even the background elements matched perfectly, as if Olivia had been present when Isabelle began the original work. Marie-Claire Rousseau was so intrigued by the connections that she arranged to conduct a video interview with the Martinez family. During the conversation, she showed Olivia additional examples of Isabelle's work, including sketches that had never been published or displayed. Olivia's reactions were immediate and emotional. When shown a drawing of Isabelle's studio, she pointed to specific areas and began speaking in her trance-like state. "That's where I kept the paints when I had money for them. And there's the window where the light was best in the morning. I painted the flower cellar from that window." Most remarkably, Olivia began to correct details in some of the museum's documentation. When Marie-Claire mentioned that one painting was believed to be a self-portrait, Olivia shook her head. "No, that's not me. That's Marguerite. She lived in the room next to mine. She was always cold and never had enough to eat." Museum records later confirmed that a woman named Marguerite Petty had indeed lived in apartment 3C during the same period as Isabelle Dubois. The discovery of this accurate information, which wasn't readily available in public records, provided additional validation of Olivia's connection to the historical period. The breakthrough reached its climax when Marie-Claire showed Olivia a photograph of an unfinished painting found in Isabelle's studio. The work showed a young girl in a garden, with only the face and hands completed. Olivia studied the image intently, then reached for her charcoal pencil. "I know how to finish this," she said, her voice taking on the familiar accent that accompanied her artistic sessions. "I was painting her when I got too sick to work. She was the baker's daughter who brought me bread when I couldn't pay." Over the next hour, Olivia created a drawing that appeared to complete Isabelle's unfinished painting. She added the missing details to the girl's clothing, completed the background garden scene, and even included a small dog that she said always followed the girl when she made her deliveries. Marie-Claire was astonished. The level of detail, the artistic continuity, the emotional consistency. It's as if she was there when the original was created. This goes beyond coincidence or general historical knowledge. The museum curator arranged for Olivia's drawing to be compared with the original painting using advanced imaging techniques. The analysis revealed that the artistic techniques, the use of light and shadow, and even the pressure applied to the drawing tool were consistent with Isabelle's documented style. The breakthrough had provided compelling evidence that Olivia possessed not just knowledge about Isabelle Dubois' life, but access to her actual artistic memories and unfinished creative intentions. The 4-year-old appeared to be continuing work that had been interrupted by death nearly a century ago. Part 5. The CUNFRUNTATIO, the story of Olivia Martinez, gained international attention when Dr. Santos presented the case at the International Conference on Art and Consciousness in March 2022. The presentation, titled Artistic Memory Across Time, a case study in childhood prodigy phenomena, attracted skeptics and believers alike, including Dr. Michael Harrison, a prominent child psychologist known for debunking claims of supernatural abilities in children. Dr. Harrison traveled to Tucson, specifically to investigate what he called the Martinez family's extraordinary claims. He arrived with a team that included Dr. Rebecca Foster, a specialist in false memory formation, and Dr. James Wright, an expert in the psychology of artistic development. The confrontation took place in the Martinez family's living room on April 5, 2022, with cameras rolling to document the investigation. Dr. Harrison approached the meeting with obvious skepticism, immediately questioning the methodology of the previous research. Children are remarkably skilled at absorbing information from their environment, Dr. Harrison explained to the family. They can unconsciously process details from books, television programs, conversations, and digital media, then incorporate this information into elaborate creative expressions that appear to demonstrate impossible knowledge. The skeptical team began by examining the Martinez home for possible sources of information about French art, 1920s Paris, or historical figures that might have influenced Olivia's drawings. They searched through books, internet browsing histories, and family possessions, looking for any material that could explain the specific details in Olivia's work. Their investigation revealed no obvious sources of contamination. The family's reading material was contemporary. Their internet usage showed no searches related to French art history, and their cultural background was Mexican-American with no connections to European artistic traditions. Dr. Foster then tested Olivia's susceptibility to suggestion by presenting her with false information about art history and French culture. She described fictional artists, non-existent techniques, and fabricated historical events, monitoring Olivia's responses for signs that she would accept and incorporate false suggestions. Olivia's reactions frustrated the skeptical team. She consistently rejected false information, often with the confident correction of someone who knew better. When Dr. Foster claimed that 1920s Parisian artists commonly used purple paint made from mountain flowers, Olivia looked puzzled and said, "That's not right. Purple was expensive. We made it from mixing red and blue when we could afford both." The confrontation reached its peak when Dr. Harrison challenged Olivia to demonstrate her abilities under controlled conditions. He presented her with art supplies and asked her to draw a scene from Isabel's life, while the team monitored her behavior for signs of coached responses or conscious deception. Olivia's reaction was different from her usual artistic sessions. Instead of immediately beginning to draw, she became withdrawn and upset. "I don't want to draw sad pictures anymore," she said, her voice returning to its normal 4-year-old cadence. "They make me feel cold and lonely." The change in Olivia's demeanor was striking. Dr. Wright, who had been observing her psychological responses, noted that the child was exhibiting signs of genuine distress related to the artistic process. "This isn't the behavior of a child who's performing for attention," he observed. "She's experiencing real emotional discomfort." The most dramatic moment came when Dr. Harrison attempted to dismiss Olivia's claims as childish imagination. His approach was direct and somewhat harsh. "Olivia, you need to understand that Isabel isn't real. She's a pretend person, like a character in a story." Olivia's response was immediate and profound. She began to cry, not with the simple upset of a corrected child, but with the deep, soul-crushing sorrow that had characterized her artistic sessions. "She is real," Olivia said through her tears. "She's sad because she couldn't finish her pictures. She wants people to remember her." The intensity of Olivia's emotional response affected everyone in the room. Dr. Foster, who had remained professionally detached throughout the investigation, found herself moved by the child's obvious distress. "This level of emotional authenticity is difficult to fake," Dr. Foster admitted. "The child's distress appears genuine, and her artistic abilities are undeniable. While I can't accept supernatural explanations, I must acknowledge that conventional theories don't adequately explain what we're observing." The confrontation concluded without the definitive debunking that Dr. Harrison had expected to provide. Instead, his team found themselves confronting evidence that challenged their preconceptions about childhood, development, and artistic ability. "We came here expecting to find evidence of suggestion or coaching," Dr. Harrison said in his final statement. "While we cannot endorse claims of reincarnation or supernatural phenomena, we must acknowledge that Olivia's case presents genuine anomalies that deserve continued scientific investigation." The confrontation had failed to provide easy answers, but had validated the authenticity of Olivia's artistic abilities and emotional experiences. The Martinez family was left to continue navigating the mystery of their daughter's connection to a life lived a century ago. Part 6. The AFDA. Olivia Martinez is 8 years old, a bright third grader who has learned to balance her extraordinary artistic abilities with the normal activities of childhood. The intense episodes of accessing Isabelle Dubois's memories have evolved into a more manageable relationship with her unusual gift. Though the artistic skill remains as remarkable as ever, Carmen reports that Olivia's Isabelle sessions have become less frequent but more purposeful. She seems to draw when she feels Isabelle has something important to communicate, Carmen explains. It's as if she's completing a mission rather than being overwhelmed by memories. The family has worked with child psychologists to help Olivia develop healthy boundaries around her artistic experiences. She has learned to distinguish between her own thoughts and feelings and those that seem to come from Isabelle, developing coping strategies for the emotional intensity that sometimes accompanies her drawing sessions. Dr. Santos continues to document Olivia's artistic development, noting that her technical skills have continued to advance at a rate that defies conventional understanding of childhood artistic development. Olivia is demonstrating abilities that typically take years of formal training to achieve, Dr. Santos wrote in her 2024 follow-up study. Her intuitive understanding of composition, perspective, and emotional expression suggests access to knowledge that transcends her chronological age. The Musée de Montmartre has maintained its relationship with the Martinez family, with Marie-Claire Rousseau continuing to research connections between Olivia's drawings and Isabelle Dubois's historical work. The museum has acquired several of Olivia's pieces, displaying them alongside Isabelle's original works in a special exhibition titled Artistic Continuity, When Past and Present Converge. The exhibition has attracted international attention, with visitors from around the world coming to see the remarkable similarities between the historical and contemporary works. Art critics have been divided in their responses, with some viewing the connection as evidence of supernatural phenomena, while others search for conventional explanations. Olivia herself has developed a mature understanding of her unusual abilities. She speaks of Isabelle as if discussing a friend or mentor, someone whose knowledge and experiences she can access, but who remains a separate entity. Isabelle teaches me how to draw better, she told a recent interviewer. She shows me how to make the eyes look sad or happy, and how to make the shadows look real. The child has retained her connection to French culture and language, often surprising her teachers with her knowledge of historical details and her ability to pronounce French words correctly. Her artwork has expanded beyond the recreations of Isabel's life to include original compositions that blend historical techniques with contemporary subjects. Last year, the family traveled to Paris, visiting the neighborhoods where Isabelle Dubois had lived and worked. Olivia's reactions to the city were complex. She recognized many locations, despite their modern changes. But she also seemed to find peace in seeing how the areas had evolved. "It's different now," she observed as they stood in Montmartre, looking at the building where Isabel's studio had been. "But the light is still beautiful." Isabelle would be happy to know that artists still come here to paint. The scientific community continues to study Olivia's case, with researchers from multiple disciplines attempting to understand the nature of her abilities. The Institute for Consciousness Studies has documented her case, alongside similar instances of children displaying impossible artistic skills, contributing to a growing body of research on anomalous childhood phenomena. Other families have reached out to share their own experiences with children who demonstrate extraordinary artistic abilities that seem to transcend normal development. The Martinez family has become part of a support network for parents navigating similar mysteries, offering guidance and understanding to those whose children display inexplicable talents. Carmen and Luis have learned to embrace the wonder of their daughter's abilities while maintaining focus on her normal childhood development. They've created a studio space where Olivia can pursue her artistic interests without the pressure of explanation or analysis. "We've stopped trying to understand why this is happening," Carmen reflects. "Instead, we focus on helping Olivia use her gifts in ways that bring joy rather than distress. Whether it's memory from a past life or some other phenomenon, the important thing is that she's happy and healthy." Olivia continues to grow and develop as both a normal child and an extraordinary artist. Her story has become a testament to the mysterious nature of human consciousness and the ways that artistic expression can transcend the boundaries of time and individual experience. Her artwork remains a bridge between past and present, carrying forward the creative spirit of a young artist whose work was interrupted by death but continues through the hands of a child who never knew her name but somehow remembers her dreams. Perhaps the most profound aspect of Olivia's story isn't the mystery of how she accesses another artist's memories, but the possibility that creativity itself might be eternal, that the human need to create, to express, to leave beauty in the world might be so fundamental that it transcends the boundaries of individual lives, waiting only for the right hands to pick up the brush and continue the work that was left unfinished.